नमस्कार फ्रेंड्स, मेरा नाम है मीत कोटेचा एंड जो भी नवंबर 2025 में AIBE का एग्ज़ाम आने वाला है, तो मेरे पास कुछ सेट ऑफ क्वेश्चन पेपर्स एंड उसके सॉल्व्ड आंसर्स हैं। सो मैं स्क्रीन शेयर करूँगा एंड देन आपको वहाँ पे क्वेश्चंस और आंसर्स मिल जाएंगे सो दैट यू डोंट हैव टू फाइंड एनीवेयर। ये मैं मेरी पूरी यूट्यूब चैनल पे आपको अपलोड किया हुआ ये वीडियो मिलेगा एंड देन यू कैन सी कि और भी वीडियोस में हर रोज डालता रहूँगा सो दैट इफ़ यू गो थ्रू माय चैनल तो इट विल बी नियरेस्ट टू श्योर कि आप लोग क्लियर हो जाओ। सो आई स्टार्ट नाउ। This is the process whereby interested parties resolve disputes, agree upon courses of action, bargain for individual or collective advantage, and or attempt to craft outcomes which serve their mutual interest. Negotiation is the process. The fundamental aim of legal ethics is to maintain the honor and dignity of the law profession, to secure a spirit of friendly cooperation between bench and bar in the promotion of high standards of justice, to establish honorable and fair dealings of the counsel with his client, opponent, and witness, to establish a spirit of brotherhood in the bar itself, and to secure that lawyers discharge the responsibility to the community generally. Whose statement is this? This is the statement of Chief Justice Marshall. Supreme Court has held that an advocate cannot claim a lien over a litigation file entrusted to him for his fees. No professional can be given the right to withhold the returnable records relating to the work done by him with his client matters on the strength of any claim for unpaid remuneration. The alternative is the professional concerned can resort to the other legal remedies for such unpaid remuneration. Refer to the specific case. This case is of R.D. Saxena versus Balram Prasad Sharma. Duty of an advocate towards his client is detailed out in which rule of Bar Council of India. It is in rule of from 11 to 33. Which section under Advocate Act 1961 deal with disqualification as to enrollment? Section 24A. Existence of two suits by parties litigating under same title, one previously instituted which is pending at present and other filed later, wherein a matter in issue is the subsequently filed suit is directly and substantially in issue in the other, and the relief claimed in the subsequent suit can effectively be passed by the court of previous instance. Which section of CPC decides the fate of the subsequently filed suit in its proceedings? Section 9. Where there are mutual debts between plaintiff and defendant, one debt may be settled against another. This can be statutory defense to a plaintiff's action and is called set-off. An attachment before judgment order takes away is power to alienate the property. The three pillars on which foundation of every order of injunction rest, that is prima facie case, irreparable injury, and balance of convenience. Dash is to enable subordinate court to obtain in non-appealable cases the opinion of the High Court in the absence of a question of law, and thereby avoid the commission of an error which could not be remedied later on. Reference. Who decides as to which of the several modes he or she will execute the decree holder. Where a party to suit requires information as to fact from the opposite party, he may administer to his advisory a series of questions. It is called interrogatories. Representative suit is a suit filed by or against one or more person on behalf of themselves and others having the same interest in the suit. A person appointed by court to protect, preserve, and manage the property during pendency of litigation is a receiver. The provision under CPC that relates to suit by indigent person is 0.33. Section 5 of the Limitation Act 1963 enables the court to condone delaying filing appeal or application on sufficient satisfaction of sufficient cause. Limitation period prescribed in filing a suit by a mortgager to recover possession of property mortgage, that is 30 years. Which are the provision under Indian Evidence Act 1872 that deals with relevancy of opinion of experts? Section 45 and 46. The content of documents may be proved either by primary evidence or by secondary evidence. Oral accounts of the contents of a document given by some person who has himself seen it is secondary evidence. The DNA test cannot rebut the conclusive presumption envisaged under Section 12 of the Indian Evidence Act. The party can avoid the rigor of such conclusive presumption only by proving non-excess, which is a negative proof. It was held in which case? Sheikh Fakhruddin versus Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, AIR 2006, AP 48. The statement of dead person are relevant under which provision? Under 32(4). Witnesses are the eye and ears of justice. Who said this? Bentham. And complies is unworthy of credit unless he is corroborated in material particulars is a presumption of fact. Patent ambiguity in interpreting documents renders it incurable. Promoting enmity between different group or group of religion, race, place of birth, resident, language, etc. and doing acts prejudicial to maintenance of harmony is an offense under which of the provisions of Indian Penal Code? It is under 153A. The gist of this offense in is meeting of mind, section 120A. A places men with firearms at the outlet of a building and tells B, A places men with firearms at the outlets of a building and tells B that they will fire at B if B attempts to leave the building. What is the offense committed by A against B? Wrongful confinement. Adulteration of food or drink intended for sale is punishable under section 270. Voluntarily causing grievous hurt to deter public servant from his duty is cognizable in non-bailable offense. He obtains property from Z by saying, "Your child is in hand of my gang and will put to death unless you send 10,000 rupees." This is extortion. Which provision under Criminal Procedure Code CPC 1973 deals with the procedure to be adopted by magistrate to record confession and statements? Section 164. Any police officer may, without an order from a magistrate or without a warrant, arrest any person who obstruct a police officer while in the execution of his duty or who has escaped or attempts escape from lawful custody under which section? Under section 41E. The plea bargaining is applicable only in respect of those offences for which punishment of imprisonment is up to a period of 7 years. Which provision under the code provides the indication as to the rule against double jeopardy? Section 300. If an accused is charged of a major offense but is not guilty thereunder, he can be convicted of minor offense. If facts established indicate that such minor offense has been committed, it was so upheld in the case of State of Himachal Pradesh versus Tara Datta. Provision of section 195 of the code are mandatory and non-compliance of it would initiate prosecution and all other consequential orders, in which case the court upheld so. In the case of S. Munniyappan versus State of Tamil Nadu, order granting anticipatory bails become operative on arrest. A contract made by a trustee in excess of his powers or in breach of trust cannot be specifically enforced as under section 11(2). Under section 41 of the Specific Relief Act, an injunction cannot be granted, that is, to restrain any person from instituting or prosecuting any proceeding in a court not subordinate to that from which the injunction is sought, to restrain any person from applying to any legislative body, to restrain any person from instituting or prosecuting any proceeding in a criminal matter. Specific relief can be granted only for the purpose of enforcing individual civil rights and not for the mere purpose of enforcing a penal law. Which provision? It is in section 4. It was held by Supreme Court of India that preamble was not part of constitution in the case of In Re Berubari Union Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, and this has been overruled in the case of Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. Okay. By the Constitution 97th Amendment Act 2011, the following word has been inserted in the Art 19(1)(c) cooperative societies. Doctrine of legitimate expectation was discussed in the following case, that is in Food Corporation of India versus MS Kamdhenu Cattle Feed Industries. Supreme Court in Selvi and ORS versus State of Karnataka held that compulsory brain mapping and polygraphic test and narco analysis were in violation of the following articles of Constitution, that is on Article 20 and 21. Passive euthanasia is permitted in certain cases, that is held in Aruna Ramchandra Shahan Bagh versus Union of India. Delivery of good by one person to another for some purpose upon a contract, that they shall, when the purpose is accomplished, be returned or disposed of according to the directions of the person delivering them. Then what is the type of contract called as? It is bailment. The essence of a contract of agency is the agent's representative capacity coupled with a power to affect the legal relation of the principal with third person. A contract is an agreement between two or more persons which is intended to be enforceable at law and is contracted by the acceptance of one party of an offer made to him by the other party to do or abstain from doing some act whose statement is this is of Hillsbury. A nephew has absconded from his home. He sent his servant to trace his missing nephew. When servant had left, he then announced that anybody who discovered the missing boy would be given reward of 500. Servant discovered the boy without knowing the reward. When servant came to know, he brought in action against A to recover the same. But action failed. It was held that servant was not entitled to reward because he didn't know about the offer when he discovered the missing boy. Named the case. It is in Lalman Shukla vs. Gauri Dutt. The debtor owes several distinct debts to the same creditor and he makes the payment which is insufficient to satisfy all debt. In such a case, in such a in such as case, a question arises as to which particular debt the payment is to be appropriated. Which section of the Contract Act provide in answer to this question? That is from 59 to 65. What property cannot be transferred under Section 6 of the Transfer of Property Act? That is first, an easement apart from dominant heritage, an interest in property restricted in its enjoyment to the owner personally, a right to future maintenance in whatsoever manner arising, secured or determined, a transfer, all of the above. A transfers property of which he is the owner to B in trust. A transfers property of which he is the owner and A is transferring to B in trust for A and his intended wife successfully for their lives and after the death of the survivor for the eldest son of the intended marriage for life and after his death for A's second son. Can interest so be created for benefit of eldest son? Take effect? No. The commencement of arbitral proceeding is not dependent on interim relief being allowed or denied under Section 9 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So 1986 Supreme Court, in which case held in Ashok from Ashok Traders and another versus Gurmukh Das Saluja and others. Okay, which provision of Hindu Marriage Act deals with conciliation? 23.2. Which section under CPC 1908 deals with settlement of dispute outside court? 89. CPC Civil Procedure Code. Equal pay for equal work can be enforced through Article 1416. Executive power of every state shall be exercised as to ensure compliance with laws made by Parliament and any existing law mentioned under Article 256. Justice Ramanandan Committee relates to creamy layer. Original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court is dealt under Article 131. Laws declared by Supreme Court shall be binding on all courts mentioned under 141. According to theory of social utilitarianism as propounded by ill-hearing, law is meant to social ends. Obstructing public servant in discharge of his public function is a bailable offence. Compensation to victims of crime under criminal law relates to 357. What person may be charged jointly and tried together under 223 of the CRPC Act? Person accused of the same offence committed in the course of same transition, person accused of an offence, and person accused of abatement of or attempt to commit such offence, person accused of different offences committed in the course of same transaction. Contravention of the Contract Labour Act not create employment relationship between contract labor and principal establishment. It was so held in which case? Under SAIL versus National Union Motor Front Workers. The principal regulator envisaged under the Trade Union Act 1926, Register of Trade Unions. A teacher is not a workman falling under the category of workman and Industrial Dispute Act. It was held in Miss A. Sundarambalam versus Government of Goa, Dhawaman Dev and others. The type of disablement envisaged under the Employment Compensation Act that reduces capacity to work in an employment similar to that of a worker was performing at the time of accident is referred in permanent partial disablement. Contribution payable under ESI Act in respect of an employee shall comprise of contribution payable by employer and employee. Which provision under Industrial Dispute Act guarantees right of a workman laid off to claim for a compensation under 25C? Natural law is the idea that there are rational objective limits to the power of legislative rulers. HLA, Hart's name is associated with the book Concept of Law. Section 9 of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 deals with restitution of the conjugal rights. Daughter is equated with son with reference to joint family property under Hindu Succession Act 2005. Mubara at under Muslim law refers to dissolution of marriage with mutual consent. discriminatory aspects of Section 10 of Indian Divorce Act, now Divorce Act, was removed by substituting new section by Indian Divorce Amendment Act of 2001. Trading activities of a company were stopped temporarily in view of the trade depression with an intention to continue the same when condition improve. A petition was preferred into the tribunal for winding up the company. The petition is liable to be dismissed. Amalgamation of the companies in national interest is dealt under 396 of the Companies Act. Under 171 of the Companies Act, a general meeting of the company may be called by giving a notice in less than 21 days. Private limited company can limit the number of members to 50. Contributory negligence means failure of a person to use reasonable care for the safety of either himself or his property. Where an enterprise is engaged in a hazardous or inherently dangerous activity and harm results to anyone or account of accident in the operation of such hazardous or inherently dangerous activity resulting, for example, in escape of toxic gas, the enterprise is strictly and absolutely liable to compensate all those who are affected by accident, and such liability is not subject to any one of those exceptions which operate vis-a-vis the tortious principle of strict liability held in case of Shriram Food and Fertilizer case. A tort is a civil wrong for which the remedy is an action for unliquidated damages and which is not exclusively the breach of a contract or breach of trust or breach of other merely equitable obligation. Whose statement is this? Salmon. Under Section 20 of the Motor Vehicle Act, if a person is convicted of an offence punishable under 189 of the Motor Vehicle Act, court shall ordinarily order for disqualification under the Act. Consumer Protection Act was brought in operation in 1986. Under Consumer Protection Act, jurisdiction of the forum shall not exceed 25 lakhs. Second principle of law AV dicey relates to equality before law. If quasi judicial authority violates the principle of natural justice, appropriate treat should be certiorari. A seven-member of the bench of Supreme Court unanimously struck down clauses 2D of the Article 323 and clauses 3D of the Art 323B of the Constitution relates to tribunals which excluded the jurisdiction of High Court and Supreme Court. Court held that power of judicial review over legislation action is vested in High Court under Article 226 and in the Supreme Court Article 32. This is an integral part of the basic structure of the Constitution and in the name of L. Chandrakumar versus Union of India. Accepting any other satisfaction than the performance originally agreed is accord in satisfaction. Where two parties have made a contract, which one of them has broken the damage which the other party ought to receive in respect of such breach of contract should be either such as may fairly and reasonably be considered arising naturally, that is according to the usual course of things, from which such breach of contract itself or such as may reasonably be supposed to have been in the contemplation of the parties at the time when they made the contract as the probable result of a breach of it, in which case principle was down. So in the case of Hadley versus Baxendale, when a misrepresentation has been made, what are the alternative course open to an aggrieved? He can avoid or rescind the contract, he can affirm the contract and insist on misrepresentation being made, he can reply upon the misrepresentation as a defense to an action of the contract. A solicitor sold certain property of his client. The client subsequently alleged that property was considered in contention. Consent was caused by undue influence. Court considered the relation with party to reach the decision. The law of conduct is intended to ensure that what a man has been led to expect shall come to pass, that what has been promised shall be performed. This is Anson. Anson. Intention not to create a legal obligation was clear from the conduct of parties, which among the popular case deals on the topic. Belfer versus Belfer. According to the Indian law, in lawful contract consideration may move from promise or any other person. Laghav owes Murli 10,000. This debt is time barred by Limitation Act. Even this Murli promises in writing that he will pay 4,500 on account of debt and signs the document. This is enforceable. An agency can be terminated by agreement between parties, renunciation by the agent, and by completion of business of agency. Which type of laws are not covered by a contract of indemnity? Laws arising from accident like fire or perils of the sea.